I'm excited to be here. This is my first visit ever to Tokyo, first ever visit to Japan. I'm excited to share what I have learned in my journey, my time with Scrum, my time with Agile. The title of this presentation is Lost in Translation. There's a movie about this Western businessman who came to Japan and couldn't understand what was going on and was disoriented and confused. This is what's going on today with managers. They're disoriented and confused about this Agile thing, about Scrum. What does this mean for them? What is their role? How can they help their people? How can they help their organization? This is what's lost in translation. And we're going to give you here in our time together a sense of how to solve this communication problem, how to help managers understand what is their role, how they can help the teams, help the organization. But before we start this, it is scientifically proven if you've been sitting for more than 20 minutes, your brain will shut off. So everyone, stand up. Stretch. Very good. Good work. Now take your seats. We'll begin. I'm going to share some things that might be uncomfortable. Some people might even describe them as controversial. So before I tell you that, I want to give a little bit of context about who I am and where this information is coming from. I have a picture of India. My father came from India. He grew up in a small village there. My mother was from Germany. And they met when they were both traveling in Canada. And I grew up here in Toronto, Canada. I'm a Canadian. But I have this view of the East and the West inside of me. And what I'm going to share with you is an integrated view of wisdom from both worlds. I'm Michael K. Sahota. I'm a certified enterprise coach with the Scrum Alliance. I'll say a little bit more about that in a moment because it's so important. And I started out in artificial intelligence research of how to create autonomous robots that can operate in complex environments. I started working in IT as a software developer, so I know what it takes to get a project delivered from the ground up, all the little bits and pieces. Very early on, I got involved with Agile as just a better way to do things. And in 2004, I got my CSM with Ken Schwaber. It was a long way back. And all this time, it was all about how do we create success. It's not about Agile. It's not about Scrum. How do we create success on our projects, on our deliveries? How do we create success in our organizations? And I was struggling. In fact, I was failing. I was running experiment after experiment. And it's so difficult to get Agile fully working in organizations. I spent the last 10 years looking at culture and leadership for the missing pieces of the puzzle. And I'm going to give you those missing pieces here today. The Scrum Alliance, the vision is transforming the world of work. And I learned when I became a certified enterprise coach in 2010 that Scrum Alliance is more than just Scrum. It's about anything that will lead to transforming the world of work. When I was applying for this, I'd gotten to the interview stage and they said, well, Michael, you're only talking about Scrum here. Don't you do anything else outside of Scrum? And I go, yeah, of course I do. I do Lean, I do Kanban, I do design thinking, I do all these things. They go, well, why didn't you talk about that? And I go, because I thought the Scrum Alliance was about Scrum. And they said, no, Michael, it's a much bigger world because we're transforming the world of work. So we are open here at the Scrum Alliance to anything, any approach that will allow us to transform the world of work. So it's Scrum plus plus. So Howard mentioned this. I encourage you, if you are an Agile coach, look for the CEC designation or the CTC. It helped me grow. It helped me be a better coach. So that's an invitation to you. Now, I'm a bit weird. I'm not a traditional Agile coach. That's in my past. We've moved beyond that at our organization. We shift the consciousness of leaders to evolve organizational performance. We've realized that it's all about the leadership. To create the success we desire, we hope for on teams, we need the whole system to work together in an integrated, aligned way. And not only that, we guide organizations in the use of conscious change techniques to accelerate the rate of growth. So we can't approach Scrum, we can't approach Agile with change the way we've done change before. We need a totally new way to think about change. And we're going to give you elements of this here today in a very practical way so you can help the managers in your organization. Or if you, in fact, here are a manager, to help you orient and understand how you can unlock the people around you. So let's dive in. What are the rules of Scrum? Number 1, we have a cross-functional team. Number 2, we have a product owner. Number 3, we have a Scrum Master. These are the rules, yes? Who's heard this before? Yeah, we all know this. These are the rules. Do you notice where the manager is? Well, we'll come back to that later. Who's heard of this? Autonomous self-organizing teams. Raise your hand if you've heard of autonomous self-organizing teams before. Raise your hand if you've heard of this. That Scrum, Agile is about autonomous self-organizing teams. Great. Keep your hand in the air if you know a team that is fully 100% autonomous. If they're able to make all decisions fully independently without talking to anyone else in the organization to get the best outcome possible. You're normal. This is actually part of the challenge we're in. We think we're supposed to have autonomous self-organizing teams, but it's an illusion. It's like this utopia that we can never reach. And we think there's something wrong with us. Maybe there's something going wrong here. We'll explore that. In 2004, when I took my CSM with Ken Schwaber, he said this: Scrum is designed to disrupt the hierarchy. In a traditional organization, your organization, you have a hierarchy. Scrum is designed to disrupt it, to blow it completely apart, so something new emerges. When we look at the rules of Scrum, where is the role of the manager? Think about this. The managers, pre-Scrum, are the most important people. They have the power. They have the expertise. They have the knowledge. They have the wisdom. They are the best people, get promoted to be managers. And we take the best people in the organization, the most important, the ones who have the most knowledge, the most senior, the most expert, and we tell them their role is what? We tell them the role is what? Now it's your turn. You're going to stand and discuss in pairs. What is the role of the manager in Agile and Scrum? Everyone stand up. What do you know so far? Let's start with what you know. Stand up and discuss this. What is the role of the manager in Agile and Scrum? Take your seats, please. Before you leave, you will have an answer to this question, very specific, as well as how to move forward to help managers in their new roles. But before we can talk about that, we need to lay the groundwork, the foundation, to understand the problem and understand what an effective solution can actually look like. Version 1 has this incredible survey all across Agile, across countries, across roles, 50,000 teams, 1,000 companies. And the key part of this, and everyone can get started with Agile and Scrum. That's easy. The problem is how to make it work fully. And these are the challenges that people experience. I'm going to point out one of them. Lack of management support, 45%. If 45% is almost 50%, or half, if you have an initiative that half of the management do not support, can you be successful with it? No. Now, yesterday, Jim Copeland talked about one possible answer. Fire all the managers. That, in my opinion, so I don't know if you've heard about this, but Agile is about people. It's about valuing people. And it turns out that managers are people too. We're going to talk about a much more compassionate, understanding approach that will lead to greater success, which does not require firing the managers. It's something a bit different. What we're seeing in organizations is that when we introduce Agile and Scrum, we increase the tension and conflict. Because managers suddenly go, well, what's my role? Will I have a job here? How will I be successful? And they go into a state of psychological fear. And the blood supply to their brain gets shut off. And they stop being able to think. That's what happens when we tell them we're moving to Agile and Scrum, and we do not tell them what their role is. This approach is not helpful. It does not work. This is part of the reason why you can have 90% failure rates in Agile transformation. So let's go on to see this. What does autonomous, self-organizing teams really mean for the organization? If you have an organization that has autonomous, self-organizing teams, what does that really mean? It means that you have a network, that you throw out the entire hierarchy, and now you have a network. And it's a trap. For your organization, for the people you have in your organization, you cannot get to a network. That's not the next step. That's a very long, future distant step. It's a great star on the horizon. But this is not the starting place for Agile and Scrum in your organization. There are other models. This is from the corporate rebels. They say, we need a new way of working, all about the people. And we need to change everything, to get rid of the managers, to have full transparency. People are not ready for this. It's a trap. It's a nice star on the horizon, a goal, an aspiration, a dream of perfection. But it's not your starting place. It is not your next step. It is a trap. It is a well-intentioned trap because there are environments like this that exist. There are companies that operate this way. But there's a very special set of circumstances and journey to get there. It's not the starting place. It's a trap. Howard mentioned this. It's about taking the traditional management pyramid and turning it upside down. So instead of having the people at the top managers leading the organization, we have the people leading the organization. This is what the shift is about. So not getting rid of the hierarchy, but turning it upside down. Even this is a big step. This is the first step, and it's a big step. Now I have two questions for you. Is staff Ready to lead? Are all the workers, all the people ready to lead the organization now? Maybe, maybe not. Are managers ready? Team leads all the way up to CEO. Are they ready to share the power, to build other leaders around them? Think about your organization. Is everyone ready for this? Probably not. We need a fundamental rethink of Agile so leaders can be successful, so organizations can be successful, so Agile can be successful. Let's come back to this. We discovered no one has an autonomous self-organizing team. That this might be a very beautiful star on the horizon, but a terrible starting place because people are not ready. Here's our opinion of it. It is a death trap. It is very dangerous to start here. Instead of this, we give you, actually before I go on, who's heard of Lean? Lean, Toyota Production System. Yes? In Lean, do we know, imagine each table here is a team, right? We've got, 40 teams here. If every team is told to optimize locally, to optimize only for your team, because you're autonomous, if each team is fully autonomous and optimizes locally, what happens to the global optimum for the whole room? Does it go up or does it go down? It goes down. We know from Lean when you optimize locally, when you have autonomy and a focus on autonomy, you will decrease the organizational performance. That's what we know from Lean. Now, I'm not going to just leave you hanging. I'm going to give you something better to replace this with as a starting place for Agile and Scrum. What we want is interrelated, responsible teams. Instead of having teams that are fully autonomous, we want teams that are interrelated, that work with each other to serve the organizational purpose. In your organization today, you probably have teams that aren't working well together. I won't ask you to raise your hands. I know this is happening. The problem is we told teams they're autonomous. It's not that anyone's doing anything wrong. The problem is we've told people they're autonomous when we should have told them, hey, let's focus on being interrelated. The word responsible replaces the word self-organizing. If you think about it, what does it take to create a great self-organizing team? That will only happen when everyone in the team is responsible for their own behavior and acts like an adult. When everyone acts like an adult and takes full responsibility for their behavior, then self-organization makes sense. The question is, where do you start? We are advising, and what we've seen work is start with people's responsibility. When you have a group of responsible people, then you will have a responsible team. And then higher levels of self-organization will make sense. So self-organization, again, is a beautiful star on the horizon. And we'd actually spend a whole talk just on this topic. But I'm going to leave you with this as a guiding point to understand that we need to move beyond this. We said, number one, keep the hierarchy. Don't throw it out. You have a hierarchy. It gives everyone a sense of psychological safety. Keep it. And instead, focus on... actually, let me say more about this. The largest case studies in Teal of these new ways of working, these places, workplaces of joy and high performance, have hierarchies. So it's not that we need to get rid of them. There's no proof of that. Getting rid of hierarchies is optional. You can also keep the hierarchy and create amazing workplaces. It's possible. The secret is this, and we need to do this no matter what, is to evolve the people. This is the Agile mindset, or being Agile. We want to evolve all the people in the organization. This is the whole journey. When we evolve the people in the organization, we will have a different organization. There's no way to create a different organization without evolving the people. So I'm going to walk you through a culture model from a book called Reinventing Organizations that talks about the evolution of organizational culture, of different ways of working together as human beings. It turns out, as we move this way, as we evolve people, as we evolve the mindset of people, as people grow and shift consciousness, then what we see is the engagements and outcomes will increase. The initial ways that we organize ourselves is around power, around structure, authority, formal rules, hierarchy. And over time, we moved on to more progressive ways to organize ourselves. We've shifted into it all being about achievement, bigger, better. We started to have innovation. The metaphor here in orange is that of a machine. If people around you talk about the organization, think about it as a machine, then you know you're in orange. Moving beyond this, we've evolved people-oriented organizations where it's all about the purpose, all about the values, all about empowerment. So green is where we start actually turning the hierarchy upside down. And then moving beyond this, we have this distributed network. We have fully shared power, self-management. This is the place of the network. This is a very advanced place. Look at this. Do you see how much evolution is required? We need to move from over here all the way over here. This is a very far step. We're saying, hey, let's back it up and start on an easier next step. Start on an easier journey based on the truth of where we are. So, what's going on here? Did this freeze? Yes. So, there's a dividing line between the old way of doing things and the new way. On the right-hand side, we have business as usual. If you are in business as usual, that is the definition of low performance. It's the definition of wasting the talents of your people. On the left-hand side, we have organizations where people have evolved. And now, because they have evolved, they can embrace complexity. They can embrace this VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. This is where business agility lives. This is the promise of Agile, is to give business agility. But that requires a shift in culture, which is based on a shift in the mindset or the consciousness of the people. That's why shifting people, evolving people is the most important thing. And our model is that no one gets left behind on this journey, including managers. So how do we think about this journey? There's a model called Theory X, Theory Y by McGregor. Raise your hand if you've heard of this. Okay, about 10%. The model says there's some people who show up like Theory X. They're unambitious, unmotivated, discouraged. Do you know people like that at work? The other part is Theory Y. People who are ambitious, excited, motivated. They can guide their own behavior. Do you know people like that at work? So the journey is to evolve people from Theory X to Theory Y. That's what this whole journey is. When people show up as Theory Y, then we can move towards higher forms of organization. So evolving people is the real goal. So how do we approach this? Well, we understand that organizational growth is a result of personal growth. For our organization to transform from one culture system or way of working to a new culture system or way of working. What we have drawn in here are some of the people. The people will need to change their behaviors from the old way of working in business as usual to the new way of working in this future organization. So everyone needs to grow. When everyone in our company grows from the old way of working to the new way of working, then we'll have a new organizational functioning. We will have business agility. We will have higher levels of performance. But that requires everyone changing their behavior. So where do we start? Okay, is this going to work? Do we start at the bottom? Do we start down here with teams? What's going to happen when we start with teams? Watch this. This might be your Agile transformation program. We start with teams, and does the whole organization change? No. Instead, what we have are these little culture bubbles, little pockets where some teams or some people get the mindset shift. This is your Agile transformation result right now, if you're doing things the way you're typically doing them, is little pockets of change. No change in the whole organization. Because you're starting at the bottom with the people who have the most power or the least power. The least power. So it's the lowest impact way of changing your organization. That's what you may be doing now. The alternative to this, to think about how do we go from where we are now to some future organizational state, well, we can start with the leaders. If the leaders evolve as human beings and change their behavior, evolve themselves to be able to support this new organizational way of being and working, then at that point, we have some chance of success of eventually shifting our culture, shifting to a different organizational way of being and functioning. It's possible. This is what we do to help organizations, is to start with the leadership. Then you have a chance of success. If this is your goal, if your goal is to create little pockets of success, starting at the bottom is just fine. And you can start with leadership at any level. If you're a team lead, if you're a manager, if you're a group leader, you don't need the whole organization to go on this journey. This triangle represents your part of the organization. Because culture is a local phenomenon. So you can make these changes no matter what part of the hierarchy you're dealing with. Because every part of the hierarchy, people have power and the responsibility to make things better. So let's continue to look at leadership. This is from the 2019 Deloitte Global Human Capital Trends. So this is a survey with top executives from around the world. And they say the key organizational challenges are with people. It's about people learning. It's about the human experience, or what do they experience when they go into work? And how do leaders function and show up? It's all about the people. So how important is leadership in this survey? 80% say it is a critical issue that needs to be addressed to create success. Research shows that while organizations expect new leadership capabilities, the Agile mindset, they still are largely promoting traditional models and mindsets. So the traditional leadership training that people have been doing and getting is not enough because it's still promoting traditional mindsets. So we need something different to create success. And the survey points the way. They asked, what are the skills leaders for the 21st century need? And they said these two things: the ability to lead through more complexity and ambiguity, and the ability to lead through inference. And we're going to talk about how this aligns with Agile itself. A fundamental upgrade of leadership is needed. It's not that leaders need to learn a new skill. It's not that they need to learn a new technique. There needs to be a fundamental upgrade in how they see the world and how they interact. So we see this as the leadership gap with Agile. Is that oftentimes we take teams and we give them the training and coaching they need. We know that if you just give a team training, they will not be successful. We need to give them training appropriate for them and coaching appropriate for them, and then they have a chance of success. Well, what about the leadership? Are they given this kind of information, this kind of understanding? Are they given the kind of training that they need? Not Scrum training, not how to do projects. They need to understand how to create an organization that functions in a completely new way. They need to understand how to turn the pyramid upside down, how to actually do that. They need what we call mindset training and coaching, a very different thing that allows them to have the Agile mindset and be able to function in this new way of working, to show up as a green or teal leader. That is what they need. A new way of being enables a new way of working. Shifting mindset is key. We want a new way of working, Agile, Scrum. But in order to have that work, we need a new way of being. We need to have a different way of seeing the world and seeing people. Otherwise, we cannot allow this new way of working will not work. We'll get stuck turn after turn. So the question is, what does the mindset shift leaders need? What is the mindset shift that leaders actually need to be successful? And we're going to go through what I call the essence of Agile. This is our definition of the deepest truth of what Agile is really about. Raise your hand if you've heard of this. Manifesto for Agile Software Development. This is the definition for Agile. So it turns out there are 3 important pieces here. Number 1, we are uncovering better ways of developing software by doing it and helping others do it. Uncovering better ways. The secret to Agile is a commitment to uncover better ways every single day. It's about a culture of learning. That is what Agile is pointing to. That is what Agile is talking about. Building in your organization a culture of learning where learning is valued, where there's time for learning, where there's budget for learning. The second part is responding to change over following a plan. And what that's speaking to is about, at a fundamental need, being comfortable with uncertainty, knowing the world is so complex we can't control it. And for leaders, they need the ability to lead through complexity and ambiguity. It's not like a nice to have. They must have this capability to support an Agile environment. The third one, and I learned this through Alex Kravitsky, individuals and interactions over process and tools. And this points to that Agile is all about the people. And for leaders, it means the ability to lead through influence. This is what we saw. So what we saw is that the skills for a leader for the 21st century are in the Agile Manifesto itself. I think it is one of the most incredible creations of our time because it points to a new way of being inside that is required to create the highest levels of performance possible. And these are the 3 essential items that it contains within its DNA. When we simplify it all, that Agile is about people over process. Process, we need it. It needs to be there, Scrum, Kanban, whatever. But it's really about the people. It's a simple concept, but it requires shifting mindset for managers to understand that it's about the people over the process and understand that and have that in every single interaction, in every single decision, in every single moment of the day. This is the mindset shift, the behavior shift that's needed to support Agile. Anything less, and we will not be able to create success. This is the requirement for us to create high performance. Now, the good news is that when a leader grows and evolves themselves, they act as an attractor. When a leader starts showing up and modeling progressive behaviors, it invites other people to show up that way too. Now, it's your turn to process this, to debrief this, to make sense of all this. I'm going to ask you to stand and in triads, that's groups of 3, discuss how effective is your organization in shifting managers' mindsets and behaviors. How effective is your organization right now in supporting managers in shifting their mindset, their behaviors, so they can show up and create this new world that we're seeking for. Everyone stand up. Go. Okay, take your seats, please. So how do we help leaders start learning new capabilities? How do we help them start this journey? We're going to talk very pragmatically about what this journey looks like and how to get started. Earlier, we talked about theory X and theory Y, about making this journey. The starting place is to use this, whether it's for yourself or the people around you, the managers you work with, to understand how much of the day do they show up as theory X? How much of the day do they show up as theory Y? If you are normal, you will show up as theory X during the day. Yes, you'll get frustrated, you'll get discouraged, you'll become afraid. This is normal human behavior. Our work is to understand that this is happening and grow through it. Then we can model and inspire theory Y. As a manager, the job is not to tell people to show up as theory Y. The number one job is to show up as theory Y. When you, as a manager or coach, are showing up engaged, motivated, passionate, caring, every day, you will inspire people. You will give them hope. This is the number one shift. To look at yourself and create a shift within yourself. People will copy what you do. That is 10 times more effective than trying to coach them or tell them. The most powerful way to influence others is to have the behavior yourself. If you ask people to do something you're not doing yourself, there's a word for that. It's not a very polite word. Yes? And it's not just theory Y. Theory Y is table stakes. It's the basic condition for creating a high-performance environment, creating a high-performance culture. We need other things beyond that. Listening, caring about people. There's a whole journey beyond theory Y. Theory Y is the starting place, and it's a very good starting place for yourself or for managers. The second place that's a very good starting place is to share power. The journey we saw from going from a red or orange culture system to a green or teal culture system is the journey of evolving people, of sharing power, of having leaders who willingly give away power. But we don't want to give it away to people who are showing up as theory X, because if we do that, it'll be a disaster. It'll be very unfortunate for them and unfortunate for the organization. So we want to share power as a way to help evolve the people, to give them the responsibility in small pieces. When you talk about autonomous self-organizing teams, is that a little sharing or a big sharing of power? It's a huge share of power. We're saying this is not intelligent. This is unhelpful to share so much power all at once. It's hard for the manager to share so much power at once and trust and believe in the people. It is so hard for the people to be given that much responsibility. Instead, we want to take little baby steps to share a little bit of power, see how that goes. Share a little bit of power, see how that goes. Experiment after experiment, step by step, to go on this journey. So this is how to understand replacing autonomous self-organizing teams with responsible teams by sharing power iteratively and incrementally. It's about using Agile itself to create Agile. There's no other way. How can you use something other than Agile to create Agile? You can only use Agile itself to create Agile. That's why it's essential to share power iteratively and incrementally. One way to think about this is to think about decisions. The way to share power is to share power decision by decision. As a manager, every time you have a decision, you ask yourself, who's a good person to make this decision to create success, to grow people, to create a high-performance outcome? Do I decide? Do I decide by myself without talking to anyone else because I have so much information, I know I'm right, I'm sure that's the correct answer? Is that the best for the organization? Or is it better that I decide after seeking advice? Is it better that I ask people their opinion? I listen to them. I collect up all the wisdom, and then I make the decision. Who's heard of the lean technique called A3? A3? It's a very similar. This is a lighter weight structure, but it's pointing towards the same concept. Or is it possible that we should decide together? As a manager, I'll make the decision with my team. That we'll all as equals make a decision together to share our knowledge and wisdom to make the best decision possible. Or is it I advise? I understand that to grow people, I need to let them make decisions. So as a manager, I give away that decision to someone else. And I give them my advice, which they can follow or not follow. That might be the right decision. Or it could be that I'll let a team actually, or people or person, be fully autonomous and play the please let me know card. Again, when we're speaking about default Agile, default Scrum, it says, managers, go from here all the way over here. Go all the way from having all the decisions to giving up all decisions. And if you start seeing things go wrong and get involved, you're a bad manager because you're micromanaging. It's not helpful to take such a big step all at once. We want to take it in little steps. So this is the second piece of advice, is start sharing power with people, decision by decision. Going hand in hand with this is something called the advice process. If you want better decisions, if you want more engagement, if you want on-the-job education, if you want to have a learning culture, the advice process lets you do that. It says for every decision, pick someone to be the decider who has ownership of the decision and is accountable for the decision. Think about you, when you have ownership and you're accountable for a decision, how motivated will you be to make sure it's a good decision? Probably very motivated. That's how this works. It uses people's self-interest to create success. And the decider seeks advice from people who have experience making decisions, people who have different perspectives about the decision, and from the people who are impacted by the decision. When we use this kind of structure, it allows us to create and grow people. It allows managers to learn up how to give decisions, and allows us to get better decisions right away. You can Google my name, advice process, it'll come up. There's a blog post written on this. Actually, I'll say one more thing. This is the kind of functioning and behavior that we see in the highest levels of performance, in the highest levels of organization. They don't actually organize around autonomous, self-organizing teams. They organize around principles like this, which is, hey, how do we all show up as adults? And how do we make decisions effectively together? Right? So they actually give people structures to create effective self-organization. So that's one of the secrets. Self-organization is the outcome, not the starting place. So we're finally a place where we can talk about what is the manager's role in Scrum. It's a fundamental rethink of Agile so leaders can be successful, so teams can be successful, so organizations can be successful. We're shifting away from autonomous, self-organizing teams to interrelated, responsible teams. In which case, if we're making this shift, the manager's job is to support this shift. How do we create interrelated, responsible teams? So in the new world, we have a cross-functional team. Now, how can a manager work with a cross-functional team? Well, they could take on the role as a scrum master or coach. Some managers may be really good with people, and they'll focus on developing the people. They'll focus on growing the people. They'll focus on helping the team become an extraordinary team and move to a scrum master or a coach role. In some organizations, they may move to a product owner role. This is what the Scrum Alliance did with the CEO. The Scrum Alliance does not have a CEO. They have a chief product owner, and they have a chief Scrum Master. That's what the Scrum Alliance did to support this kind of shift, to get away and break this traditional management way of functioning. Some managers may be excellent technical leads, so we can promote them and give a separate technical track so they can still get raises, etc., and status by being extraordinary through technical excellence. That's the way some managers may move to. And some managers may move to becoming an organizational coach, where they don't just work with one small group, but they work across the whole organization, helping the whole organization grow and thrive and evolve. Or they might take on some other role. It doesn't matter what role they find as long as they're adding value to the organization. That's the secret. Now, if you try to go to at the network and you get rid of the hierarchy, you can do that. You can say, hey, managers, you've got 1 year to find a new job or you're fired. It's not very kind. It's not very helpful. They don't even have the skills to function in this new world. We're advocating a different approach. We're advocating helping the leaders get the mindset shift they need in the new world and then help them find a new role that works for them. But this is this end place. You do not start here. You do not go back to your organization and say, hey, manager, here's a slide, pick a new role. Because they won't be able to do it. They need the training and the mentoring and the coaching support to have the mindset shift to be able to do this. So the starting place is what we talked about earlier. Shifting from theory X to theory Y. Giving away power iteratively and incrementally. Starting to use the advice process to start getting comfortable with other people making decisions. That's the starting place. Eventually you may shift towards this, and there might be some sort of change in how people's roles are. But this is the manager's role in Agile, in Scrum. But it's not the starting place. This is where you end up. You start with the mindset shift. You start with helping them shift their behaviors. Then this is possible. So I'm going to ask you now to stand and discuss in triads. What support is needed for managers to evolve their mindset to be effective in new roles? So think about it. For managers to be able to function in these kinds of new roles, what support do they need? All right, everyone. 1, 2, 3, go. Stand up. Discuss. Please take your seats. So in this time together, we've shared with you the traps of Agile or Scrum as usual. We've helped you understand why some of the typical things going on right now do not work the way they're intended to work. We've talked about a way to understand a journey towards creating the success we hope for with Agile. So we'll summarize all of this right now, and then we'll go to questions. Our model is simple. No one gets left behind, including the managers. That we treat managers with the respect they deserve, to give them the training and mentoring that they need to not just understand Scrum. They don't really need to understand Scrum. They need to understand a much bigger challenge. How to operate in this new way of working. How to manage and share power. How to share decisions. How to not only grow themselves, but to help grow the people. This is the support, the retraining that managers need. And they deserve it because they're people too. What we're speaking about is a model we call the evolution of high performance. We want business agility, the ability to thrive in a VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. In order to create this capability within your organization, you need Agile, DevOps, new ways of working. We need these new ways of working. But in order to create these new ways of working and help them actually be successful, to get the full benefits, this will only happen when we have a supportive organizational environment and culture. Agile is like a seed. We can only plant the seed in fertile ground for it to grow. We need fertile ground for Agile to be successful. That fertile ground is a healthy organizational environment and a culture that supports Agile with leaders who support it. Leaders are the ones creating this organizational environment and culture. They have the power and the responsibility to create the environment for Agile to work. So all the challenges you're seeing in your environment are about the culture. It's about not having an environment that is compatible with Agile. Now, if we stopped here, we'd say, oh, it's them. It's the leaders. They need to change. But when you have one finger pointing away, there are three fingers pointing back at you. The truth is that we need to change. When we change how we show up, any of us, regardless of our role, that helps inspire leaders on their journey. When they're inspired, they can create the healthy environment. And then these new ways of working can work. And then we will have business agility, the high performance that Agile promises. This is the path to creating high performance in your organization. It starts with you, no matter what your role. This is what I discovered. And this is why I've been so focused on my growth. I started as a developer because I wasn't good at talking to people. There are some other words you could use to describe me that are not so pleasant. Yeah. And so I shifted how I showed up. And now I spend my time, my wife Audrey and I, we travel around the world, we teach leaders this new mindset, this new way of being all around the world through this Cal 1 program. Because it is the most important thing that is needed to create success with Agile. To summarize, a new way of being enables a new way of working. We need the Agile mindset, the green or teal mindset, the progressive mindset. When we have that inside of ourselves, then we can help others. So shifting mindset of ourselves and of leaders is the key to success with Agile and Scrum. We talked about this journey, that as we evolve people, as people shift their consciousness, as people shift their mindset, the engagement and outcomes increase. Everybody wants high performance, and the way to get it is to move away from red and orange types of organizations where it's about business as usual into green and teal organizations where we go from business as usual towards a place where people have a mindset to embrace complexity, where people are living the spirit of the Agile Manifesto, the essence of Agile. They're learning. They're able to lead through influence. They're able to respond to change. And they value people. Then we can have business agility. Then we can have the full benefits of Agile. This is the shift we're talking about. This is what the shift Agile and Scrum are pointing to. And we're talking about the exact same change that was spoken about yesterday, but approaching it in a radically different way. In a way that instead of firing managers, we respect them as human beings, and we value them, and we give them the support that they need to create a healthy environment to enable the shift to actually happen. That knowing that it starts with them, and for it to start with them, it actually starts with each of us. So you're welcome to continue the journey, to connect on LinkedIn. My book, which is in English, sorry, it's not in Japanese at this point, is a free download on our website. I've got lots of blog posts, and we do leadership training and consulting. That's our world. And I think Mick asked me to remind us, there's a meetup that we have to talk about business agility from an Agile perspective. So we'll talk about this and some other concepts to go deeper on the topic next Tuesday. Yes? Yeah, and Mick, maybe you can tweet it. Yeah? Okay. All right. What else is there? So I hope this has been valuable for you. I hope that this has offered you a different perspective of what it takes to create the success for Agile. I hope this helps you understand and help leaders who are lost in translation learn the language of this new way of working. Come out of the confusion to understand that they go from not having any role, but to having the most important role in the whole organization. That is the shift in the role of the manager in Agile. Thank you very much. So we have time now for questions. So please ask whatever questions are coming up for you, and I'll do my best to answer them in as much detail as I can.
I can ask in English, it's fine. I just saw the relation. Wanted to ask the question, the relationship between lean, the A3 method you mentioned, and also the decision part. I just didn't get that. I know that what we do in A3, but that.
Yeah. So if we look at the A3 technique from Lean, it's a way to build alignment in the organization, and it's a way to grow people to become leaders. Yes? It's also a way for leadership to give away power. When you're running an A3 technique, you take the most junior engineer and you say, here's a blank sheet of paper. Go figure out how to solve this problem. And it's used to grow people. It's used to develop people. It's used to give away power. Those are the same principles of what I've been speaking about here. In Japan is the home of Toyota. These are the principles of Toyota, the ones that really made them successful, is valuing people, valuing their growth. And we're talking about turning it up a notch and go beyond that to something even more incredible. That's what Agile is pointing to. Does that help answer your question?
Yep. Thank you.
Hi. So the narrative that you hear a lot, I think, not only just in Japan, but is that there is a layer of middle management that tends to, do a lot of bad things when you're talking about Agile mindset. Is there any reason that you left that out of your contents today, or is it just something that should be, kind of incorporated into the method? I'm just curious. Curious.
That is a fantastic question. Who here has expressed problems with the frozen middle management? Who's heard of that? Who's heard of that? Yeah, it's a real thing. It's a real thing, but it doesn't exist. It's a lie. If the people at the top were actually living the Agile mindset, actually living the Agile values, you wouldn't have a frozen middle. If they're at the top not actually living the values and the spirit of Agile, then you'll have a frozen middle. But the frozen middle isn't really frozen, because frozen means they're yes to the Agile mindset in the bottom, we got a yes at the bottom, and in the middle, they're a no. But that's not true. We actually have a no at the top and a no in the middle. And we have these little pockets. We actually have, anywhere you think there's a frozen middle, you actually have, where is it? You actually have this. You actually have pockets. Because when leaders really at the top have a shift in mindset, a shift in consciousness, they wouldn't have a normal Agile transformation program. Because they'd try to approach change in an Agile way, in an iterative, an incremental way, where they learn and grow, and they'd be modeling learning and growing, and they'd be running experiments. I guarantee you, tell me if I'm wrong, the people at the top of your organization you're referring to are not being vulnerable. They're not running experiments. They're not admitting mistakes. They're not asking for help, and they're not giving away power. Yes, no?
You're absolutely correct. It's just that there are structural issues. I'm basically repeating what you're saying, but there are structural issues within the company that prevent them from taking the action that they want to take, that middle layer. And that hasn't been removed by the top layer, which is an expression of how they're not really doing what they're saying that they're doing.
Yes, so agree, and you hit the nail on the head. I mean, ultimately, when we look at this model, the evolution of high performance, what you're saying is the organizational environment and culture is such that there's a frozen middle management. Well, who's creating that? The top leaders are, right? That's what they're creating. So they need different actions. It's not that they're bad people. It's not that the middle managers are bad people. People in leadership, middle layer, bottom layer, top layer, have not had the training and the mentoring that they need to be able to operate in this new way of working that Agile is pointing to. It's not anyone's fault. And to my understanding, the technology for doing this and really helping them has not been on planet Earth. I try to learn from anyone I can. I read book after book, went to course after course to find out how to do this. The answer isn't out there. I had to create this method. It's coming up in our new book, Leadership 314, which is not out yet, sorry. But right now, the technology for doing this is not on the earth. So no one knows how to do this. So it's not anyone's fault. So people are just doing the best they can. And even if they want to be successful, they turn to typical organizations, typical consulting companies to help them, and they get traditional advice. And it doesn't work. Thank you.
はい、他ご質問ございますか？日本語でも大丈夫ですよ。
じゃあ、日本語で質問させてください。
はい、どうぞ。
とても面白いお話ありがとうございました。アジャイルのこういった研修を聞くと、マネージャーが悪だとか、マネージャーを辞めさせろみたいな話が、多い中で、マネージャーを一人も辞めさせないで改革をするっていう話に、とても勇気づけられた思いがします。とはいえ、やっぱりそこに悩んでる人も多いし、マネージャーもマネージャーで悩んでるっていうのも事実だと思っていて、どうして、すいません。サユダさんが、そのマネージャーを一人でも辞めさせないで改革を成功すると思えるようになったのかっていうエピソードがあったらお聞かせいただければと思いました。お願いします。
Yeah, so that's a very good question. Very good question. The first step, whether you're dealing with someone on a team or working with a manager, is to help them, to offer help, to give them the training they need, the coaching, the mentoring, the on-the-job assistance they need to help them move to a new way of being, to learn a new skill. That's what caring about people really is all about, right? That's the first step. After that step, is you give people opportunity after opportunity after opportunity, and they don't want to go on the journey. You can either give up on the journey of having a high-performance organization, of creating a successful high-performance company, or you can ask the person and say, hey, this is the journey we're going on. Do you really want to be part of that? Are you ready to learn and grow yourself? And they might say, no, I'm not ready to do that. And you say, well, thank you for your service here. Of course, we'll give you a very generous package to help you exit. This is a very normal, natural thing. Now, if we just take the starting place of firing all the managers, that's firing 100% of the managers. What we're talking about is a much more compassionate approach where we might only lose 10%. Not because they're bad, but because they want something different. They don't want to be part of a learning culture. They don't want to learn new skills. And that's okay. But we don't want to make them bad. We don't want to make them wrong. We want to value them, support them. Initially, what we're going to the teaching of how to approach change in a much more conscious way. But in a nugget, the secret is to invite and make it optional at the beginning, and then eventually make a decision. Well, do we want to go on the journey? Or do we want to keep these people and not go on the journey? Because that's what it will come down to. So this is the most compassionate, caring approach that we've found for dealing with managers. So eventually some people may exit or may voluntarily choose to exit or may be asked to exit. But that's the last step. The first step is to support, to invite, and create options for them. Not demand they change, but to instead be very understanding that this is a difficult journey for anyone, whether they're a staff member, whether they're a manager, to go about looking at ourselves and growing and shifting our mindset, shifting our behaviors. It's a challenging thing, so we don't want to force anyone to do this. Thank you.
ありがとうございました。
So I think we'll take the last question here. I'll love to continue the conversation, answer any other questions. So please find us over lunch this afternoon.
Just want to share during our discussion earlier, like we were thinking that the most effective way for like the CEO or the managers to join in is to invite someone outside the company to train about or to coach regarding the new process that we want to build in the culture of the company. And also, I want to also ask, like, we're dealing with, we have cross-culture, we have Japanese in our company, we have different Americans in the company. How difficult it is to, to relay that kind of mindset to different individuals with different, cultures, with different backgrounds.
Yeah, so the first question is, just repeat the first question.
Yes, so are you saying that, like, inviting someone outside from the company can help?
Okay, so this is a great question. How did I learn to do this? How did I learn how to do this? I know how to do this, right? I'm an expert at this, but how did I learn that? I ran experiment after experiment after experiment. I learned whatever I could from others, and I created this method, the structure, this way. So I have a lot of fluency and expertise in it. So the level of support I can give someone is very high. Depending on what you spent your time doing in your life, your training, your expertise, you may be somewhere on the journey. No matter where you are on the journey, you can create help. But there'll be a limit to how much help, because what I learned is that in order to help leaders very powerfully, I needed to grow myself. That's why I've been very focused on my own growth, my own development. So it's not about outside, inside. That's not the question. The question is, what's the mindset and capability of the individual? How have they grown? How are they able to relate? How have they internalized respond to change over following a plan? How have they internalized learning and growing themselves? How have they internalized valuing people over process? Yeah? So that's the shift. When we have the inner shift ourselves, then we can help others. We have to do what's called put the oxygen mask on ourselves first. We have to grow ourselves, then we can help others grow. Right? Once we've gone on the journey, then we can help others come on that same journey. Yes? So that's question number one. Question number two was, what about cross-culture? We have trained leaders all over the world. And what we can say is the challenges with Agile are the same all over the world. Yes, Japan is unique. Yes, there is a unique culture. But at the core of it, we're dealing with human beings. We're dealing with ego. We're dealing with the ability and desire to grow. All that really matters is that someone says, yes, I understand to create the success I want, I need to grow. When that spark hits, that flame hits, that gets ignited, then change is possible. And what we found is that's the same for each human being around the world. Thank you. So we're going to close there. Thank you so much, everyone. It's a joy and pleasure to be here. Really appreciate you giving me your full attention. Thank you.